Hello, happy Friday night. I just did a private event on Zoom with a group with colored pencils, and I had a lot of fun with them, and theirs came out amazing. So I thought I'd jump on here and share it with you. So all I'm going to be using is just a 12 pack of Crayola colored pencils, and if you have crayons or just colored pencils around, doesn't matter if you have a ton, just a few is perfect. And of course you can do this a later time, but I just wanted to share it with you. It's kind of fun. With colored pencils, you can build up color and start learning how they work, and you can have like a flat childlike drawing, or you can take it up a step. And I'm just going to show you 3 different techniques that will really take your colored pencil drawing to the next level. And it's super fun and simple. Theirs came out amazing, and I'm going to see them next Friday to do another one. So I hope you are having a wonderful night, and maybe this weekend you can grab some colored pencils and join me. Again, I'm just going to be using Crayola, but once you start playing and you're like, oh yeah, I like this, I can tell you what the next step up is from your Crayola, maybe like a Prisma, and we can talk about more techniques as well as we go. What I like about colored pencil is that there's no real mess. Once I'm done, just pick everything up, and I don't have to, wash my brushes. So that's great, and I can do this anywhere. I throw my colored pencils and maybe some paper right in my bag, and I can do it anywhere, right? And also it's kind of cool because at this time, I've been going through my camera roll, and I see a lot of great photos that, I'm like, I want to paint that. I want to, do something with it. And this is a really fun and easy way to create some great art. And again, I'm just using Crayola, but of course you can use whatever you have, crayons, markers, whatever you have. So colored pencils, I have my 12 pack. I set them all up by color in groups, and I have a little sharpener, nothing crazy. You can even have an X-Acto knife, whatever you have, just be careful. But you always want your tools to be all ready, sharpened to go. And I just have computer paper. I just have some white computer paper, so whatever you have. One other thing when you're thinking about drawing or coloring is how am I holding my paper. And I'm going to hold mine vertical, but of course you can hold yours on the side. One other thing you can think about is, do I want to fill in my whole sheet? And I am going to do that tonight, but I'm going to sort of show you. I'm going to turn this real quick. But I could just with a pencil, or take a book maybe and trace the book, or I could just kind of freehand it and make whatever shape canvas I like. Or another way is if you have masking tape or like painter's tape, I can create a border of whatever size, and I take that tape, and one trick I have learned is I take the tape and I put it on over my knee or my leg, right? So I'm grabbing a little bit of that lint from whatever I'm wearing, I rip it right off, and then I lay it on my paper. What that's gonna do, it's gonna add a little bit of lint, which will make it so when I pull that tape off, I won't rip my paper. Just covers a little bit of that stickiness. And that also can be cool when I take that tape off of the edge. I'll have almost like a framed effect, and it also saves the edges, and again creates whatever size canvas or piece that I'm working on. I can change that to any size. So think about the direction of your paper. Do you want to add a border? Do you want to change the shape and just do a smaller, right? Because you don't always have to do huge. You could do tiny, and those are super cute too. Sometimes, like, I have a small space that I want to have artwork, and I can't put a whole 16 by 24 or whatever. This is a great way to do that. And also, I can frame these super easily. So if you have some frames set around, pop these in, and it looks really cool. So before we get started in the landscape that I'm going to show tonight, I am going to go over a few techniques that are fun. I will post in the comments. I made a printout, and you could use this. You could give this to your kids to use. It's just going to show 3 different techniques, and you can play with it. If you have a piece of paper, you could totally just do this right now with your blank piece of paper, or you can print this out later and do it later. But I'm going to show you my paper now. So I'm just using colored pencils tonight, and I just have a 12 pack of Crayola, nothing fancy, and I'm going to make a really cool landscape. You can see that all right. So up here I have 3 circles, and with my whatever color, I'm going to choose purple. I'm going to play and see if I can get a light, a medium, and a dark. So with the pressure, I'm going to start filling in, maybe a little bit lighter. How light can you go? Back and forth, or whatever direction you like. Filling that in. So that's pretty light. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to put a little bit more pressure. And with my colored pencil, I hold it a little further back. If I was using a paintbrush, I'd hold it nice and low. I'm sure you've seen that. So I'm hold it a little further back. And I'm just using a medium pressure. So this is allowing, a little bit of the white is still showing through my paper. I'm going the same direction, but it is a little darker and a little bit less white than this one here. So light, medium, and then I can go a little bit harder. And if you are going to see that, you might just kind of say, I like it, or just check what's underneath there. And this is nice and hard. Light, medium, hard, or dark. It's pretty cool to see with one color what I can get just by doing that. And you could do it, light a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and get even more variations. So that's kind of fun with pressure. And then you can think about your brush mark or your mark with your pencil or crayon. Think of maybe straight. So I'm going just straight side to side. I could go straight up and down, straight on an angle, whatever direction I want, but this is just straight, right? Circles is kind of cool. It adds, if I just slow it down and I'm doing these tiny little circles here, it's adding a really cool effect, kind of adding some fluffiness to my mark. It's definitely different than my straight, right? It's interesting. Maybe try a little bit bigger circles, see what happens, a little bit more pressure. You could really play with that. I bet there's tons and tons of different marks you can make, but with just these 3, the straight, the circle, and I'm going to show you a little bit of cross hatching, which is really just cool and takes, your kids' tools and takes them up, right? A level, and really creates some beautiful artwork. You also, if you find that you're like, oh, I like this, definitely I highly suggest, getting Prismacolor or any other, step up in your colored pencils. You'll really enjoy using them. So I did one direction, and now I'm going to turn my mark and I'm going to go up and down. I could create actual marks so I see those crisscrosses, or I could just kind of do nice and even tone or even pressure one way and even pressure the other way, and it just kind of fills in those holes a little bit different than our just straight one direction. So that's cool. And then mixing colors, layers. You're like, what? I can do that with your colored pencil? Absolutely. So let's, I'm going to pick up a green, and I'm just going to do a nice light green, right? I'm going to use green, and then let's see what color that is. Blue. So I have 2 different colors now. Now let's add them together, what they equal. have my green. I have those little white, because I did a medium to light pressure. And now I'll pick up that blue. And if you're like, I don't have my colored pencils right now, you can just watch this video later. And then, I invite you to, look through your camera roll, or maybe just go for it and create your own landscape or picture. You even just kind of get wild and do more of an abstract. But by layering those two colors, I created a whole new color. Like, I only have 12, but now I have 13 colors, right, in my colors. And I added also interest. So, and that was just using the straight and using two lights. So it's pretty cool. So again, I will put in the comments here, I've made one on my computer that you can print out of this. You can keep it for yourself, or you could, maybe give it to your kids to play with. It's just really fun to play with your tools and get to know them and see what happens, right? And see, can you come up with any other kind of marks? Play with that. All right, so I'm going to keep this over here to the side. And I'm going to again think about how I want to hold my paper. Do I want to have the whole sheet, or do I want to tape it off, or maybe, grab something and trace it and then have a different size canvas to use. But I'm going to just keep my paper going up and down, and I'm just going to take you step by step. So of course, make this your own. Have fun with it. It's really cool to, if you've painted with me before and now go to colored pencil. I haven't used colored pencil in a while, and I used to do it all the time. I have a whole bunch of colored pencils. I love it. But painting kind of took over, but now I'm like, ooh, this feels good and this is fun. And it's a lot of, being brave and just really trying things out and seeing what happens. Also, patience even with a not wet material, because I have to be like, all right, how am I going to build this up? How am I going to create the look that I'm going for? Oh, Amy, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for joining me, and thanks for watching. I hope you're having a good night. What was I saying? But yeah, so just really have fun with it and go for it. Try things out. One thing to think about is to have your extra sheet or 2 extra sheets so you can try things out before you go on to your artwork. But all about having fun, all about problem solving, all about trying things, all about just expressing yourself. Don't worry about what's, the end product is. It's about the process. But I'm ready to get started. So let's go ahead and look at our piece of paper. Again, mine's vertical. I'm just using white computer paper. And I'm just using a 12 pack of Crayola pencils. I have a sharpener, I have my paper. Let's see. All right, cool. So my picture here tonight is we're going to be using different marks, we're going to use different layers, and we're going to use different marks, layers, and pressure. So 3 different things in this. Also, what's kind of cool about it, like I could do like 500 more layers and really continue to build it up. The more, I believe, the more layers, the more pressures that you use, really creates more interest and brings your drawing from, flat and just, yeah, it's nice, to like, wow. So tomorrow morning, maybe I'll pick this up again and I'll be like, well, let me push this up here a little bit more, or add a little bit more of a shadow down here. So just like painting, you can always kind of keep going back into it and see what you can come up with. It's always evolving. And you're the one that's going to say, okay, I think this is done, right? You can say, it's done. And it's sometimes kind of funny to find that time to say, all right, the pencil is down, I'm stepping away. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. If you have painted with me, or if your kiddos have colored with me, you know that we have one more tool. We have our finger. And what I like to do is really plan out my mark before I go up with my medium, my tool, my pencil. So I'm really going to plan it out, really picture it, use my finger, and get the feeling of that mark. So what I'm going to start with is that tree here. Now you're like, oh my gosh, I can't draw a tree. Yes, you can, absolutely. and we're gonna do it right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my black colored pencil, and I'm going to create one side of my tree. I'm gonna focus on this side here. So I'm gonna find the bottom corner and I'm gonna move over. So I'm into my picture, right? And I'm going to go up and curve, up and curve. So I'm going to find about halfway up my paper. And from the bottom, that I'm about 1.5 inches, 2 inches in, I'm going to draw a straight line about halfway up, and I'm going to stop. Now I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to slowly curve just a little bit, slowly curve and stop. I don't have to go all the way off. I'm just going to stop up here. So I'm straight, and now I'm just going to do a slight curve. Something like that. Nice. So now I say, well, what side of the tree is this? I was planning for this side. I think I got it. So I have this side here. So now I'm going to add my next side of my tree, the other side. Sometimes a tree is a little bit wider at the base, and then it gets a little thinner as it goes up. One thing I've seen, as I've seen like a witch's broom or like a broom, right? And that doesn't look as natural as a nice gradual taper. And you really don't even need it. It can be just straight. Trees they're all different. Also, when you're drawing a tree, a lot of times we have this like picture perfect little tree in our mind. When you look out at trees like tomorrow, you're gonna really notice that they're really like gnarly and they have bends in them. And also, if you notice the bark is more of like a gray than a brown. I mean, there are some browns in there, but that's why we're using black first. I am gonna add some brown just to warm it up, but I'm gonna focus on some of more of a gray. So, talking too much. I'm gonna go back down here to that bottom, move over. I'm just gonna say, all right, that looks pretty good for the width. I always kind of change it, and I'm keeping a light pressure, like we just practiced in the beginning. I'm going parallel to this trunk here, and I'm gonna stop halfway. And I'm gonna say, all right, do I want to continue up, or am I going to make kind of like a Y? I think I'm gonna go for a Y. So I'm just gonna go right on up, and I just kind of went this way a little bit. So I have that side right there. Cool. And I'm gonna find down here somewhere, I'm going to make my split, which is just a V. And from there, I'm going to take that side of the V, and I'm going to go right on up parallel to this. And I can say, do I want to add another fork in the road? Sure. So now I need to add that inside V, run parallel. And of course, your tree can be any way you'd like it to be. Don't overthink it. Just going to get it in. And also, it's interesting because with our trees, we don't have to draw every twig, every branch, because we know they're all there, so we don't really need to draw them. And it's not the star of the show, and this is this sky up back here, right? So this, I don't have to go in too much detail because I want the eye to go to here. So I'm going to drive up on this side here, extend up parallel to the branch side here, getting a little closer as I go, because I notice that tree branches, they grow and they get smaller and smaller, right? Do I want to have a fork in the road? I could. I think I'm just going to go straight up, and I'll add that fork or branch off after. So there's just like my basic trunk with maybe one branch. Now I can go off, and I can add a few more. Maybe I'll add one going off this way. And if I'm doing this in a nice light pressure, I won't see any of those lines. So that looks cool. I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to start thinking about the mark. And I'm going to use holding my pencil a little further back, I'm going to just start working. And right now I'm going to start with just kind of like a light pressure. And I'm just filling it in. And you're going to notice when you start filling in your background, you're going to notice that this that looks pretty dark is actually not very dark, right? When you put color next to color, it changes things. So right now, once over, we always can go back in and add more layers, more colors, more details. So right now, this is just the beginning. So I'm just going in, thinking about the direction. I'm going up and down. You could add some darker marks in there, or we can add those later if you want to add some texture to your bark. If you want to add a little bit more of a wider base, you can bring that out here. If you are using a whole sheet of paper like me, you want to just be aware that when you're coloring off, sometimes you grab it like that and you could rip your paper. So just be aware when you get down. So yeah, that looks great. It's gray, but to make it have a little bit more life to it, I'm going to just go over it with some brown. And this is where it starts coming alive. And like again, like I said, I always can add some more texture, some more shadowing, some more interest into it later. This is my final. And my next step, I'm just going to kind of think about this like tree top here, and I'm not, again, it's not the focus, so I'm not going to draw every single leaf, every single twig, but I am going to just draw kind of like the shape of the top of these leaves here. I'm going to grab my light green and I'm just going to think about how they're kind of filling in, hanging there, and just kind of draw these kind of like curves, thinking about those full leaves. Maybe down here, I don't have it in this one, but maybe I'll add a little bit of a tree, of some leaves hanging on there. So to start here, let's add those layers. Let's think about our mark. I'm going to just fill in our base coat here, medium light. I'm going to build up with color. And now I can start building up some interest. And I'm going to start thinking about, maybe I have some leaves in there with some texture. And my leaves are super simple. I'm going to grab a dark green, and I'm just literally like making these little zigzags, and you can turn your zigzags. I mean, you could get as fancy as you'd like, and maybe there's some, really pretty full leaves poking out here and there, but I'm just kind of having fun making these marks and textures that I'm going to just add these little zigzags. And I can go right kind of off here and there. Different directions. Maybe you can see a whole big mark, big leaf, maybe just a little one here and there. And I'm just going in, and of course I can go back. Now maybe I'll go in and just give it a second layer with this darker green, pushing down harder here and there, just showing that there's some depth into that tree. Adding some more little hard little zigzags right off my paper because I know there's more beyond that edge. And tonight I'm just using a 12-pack of Crayola. If your kids have some laying around, grab those, or see some at the store. grab them because you can have some fun with them. Add some more down here. I always can go back and add more to this. I think I'm going to add a second coat of some yellow because in May now we're going to start seeing those brand new leaves, which are beautiful, those beautiful green. And by adding this yellow, it adds that life to these, which are beautiful. All right, nice. So for now, I'm just going to let that be, and I'm going to go ahead and go down to my horizon, to my background, to my mountains. Of course, this can be, you know, mine are going to be purple, but you could definitely do greens or black or brown, whatever you'd like, but I'm going to use my purple. And I'm going to cut my paper right in half with the bottom edge of my mountainscape. You could choose to bring it down further if you wanted more sky and less grass, or vice versa if you wanted more grass, if you had another idea for your grass area. So just think about that for a moment. I'm going to kind of find the middle of my paper, and I'm going to, you could grab a ruler, you could grab a book, whatever you have, or just go for it. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight, but I'm just going to draw my line across. And now what I'm going to do, and I'm going to continue with that light hand. I'm going to add that beautiful mountain edge, and I'm only going to go up about, you know, 1.5 inches or so from that line, and I'm going to say that that's going to be the highest point. So the rest of my points are going to be below or that height. I'm also going to really take my time, like take a deep breath and really think about how you want those bumps and peaks to be. Sometimes we get excited and we kind of do this. That's great. That could be it. Or you could make it a little bit more interesting and stop, right? And then really think about your mark. But this is yours. So however you'd like it, but I know my highest point. I have my bottom line, and I'm just going to take my time, stopping, looking, stepping away, whatever I need to do. And you could do this in a light to medium pressure. And that looks nice to me. So from here, I'm going to go up into my sky. So I'm going to add some yellow first. Now, this is your sky. So of course you can add, you know, if you love yellow, if you love orange, you can add as much or as little of these colors as you like. And you can build them. So our first mark across is not our last. I'm going to use a light pressure, and I'm going to go back and forth. I'm going to think about my mark, my stroke, and I'm going to start building up by layering the colors like we already did that with our tree. We already found that's really cool effect and more interesting. And I know that I can build it. I can build on this. So I'm going to go with a light, and I'm going to layer, and I can go back and make it more intense. I'm going to start with yellow. Start with that, let's see, right at that top of my mountains. Right at that top of that mountain, and I'm just going back and forth. And actually I want to show you that I'm not doing it solid. Here's a different color just so you can see. Have my pencil on an angle. I'm not using the tip because that would be a hard mark, so I'm using kind of the side, and I'm being very free with my mark. I am going side to side, but I'm allowing there to be some openings, and that allows me to be able to mix, blend, and layer. So I'm going in back and forth, and I'm going to go about halfway up in my sky area with this yellow. Now again, if you're like, Jackie, I really don't love yellow, You don't have to. You can keep it nice and low. You don't even have to add it. Your sky could be blue, totally blue, could be middle of the day, right? So have that base there. I'm going to switch to an orange. I have just orange here, and I'm going to focus more pressure or more buildup of color on this right side here. I'm keeping my mark flat, and if you've painted with me before, when we're doing our skies, our blending, you know that I don't love the look of like two colors hitting like this, right? I like to really allow them to blend. So if you want to have stripes, totally fine. But just like in painting, I bring whatever color I put next and I bring it down. So I have my orange, and I'm going to just start, and I'm going to go back and forth, and I'm just layering lightly on top. I can be very loose because I can build this up. It's not like my paint's going to dry. I have to hurry. If the lighter you go, the more you can play with it. Maybe you can start getting a little bit more brave, right? And push down a little harder here and there. I'm going to kind of keep this a little bit lighter, focusing my brights and darks over on this side, but you could do whatever makes you happy. I'm going to bring my orange up a little bit higher, keeping in mind, you know, how much of blue and purples I want in there. I really love orange and yellow, so I brought mine up a little bit higher. I'm going to switch on over to a red, and I'm going to do the same thing. Start right here. I'm going to bring it down nice and light, allowing that to kind of blend on in. Maybe there's a few red stripes poking out. I have these openings with that yellow, so I can start playing here. I think that looks good. I'm going to stop for a minute, and I'm going to introduce another color. I always can go back and fill in any of these openings, so taking your time, really layering and being patient with that is, I believe, is important with all art. I have my purple. Do the same thing. I'm going to start right up top. Lightly bring that down. I'm going right through my tree because I am going to do a second coat on my tree trunk, that's black and brown, so it will cover these colors, and I don't feel like going all in between these, so I'm just going through them. I'm building that purple, bringing it over if I'd like. And I think I'm going to bring it up just a little bit higher. And I'm going to add my next color, which is my blue. So I have two blues. I have a sky blue and a blue, a dark blue. And I'm going to go ahead and just start filling this in. Bringing it down wherever I want to bring it, how far I want to bring it down. Bringing it up in here. Right up in those little nooks and crannies I've created with those leaves. Back and forth. Think about that pressure. And I'm going to add one more. I'm going to add that dark. And I'm going to start way up here, just allowing it to blend. So it's interesting, painting and with your crayon, your colored pencil, the amount of pressure is just so incredible, like how, what it does. So you could totally, as you're going, you go hard, and as you're going, you start lifting off that pressure, right? So really start playing with it, and it's actually really fun. So a little bit more pressure, and as I'm going down into that lighter blue, I'm lifting up. I'm totally putting purple in my sky by accident, but I wanted that blue, but that's fine. They look very similar. So I'm just going in. That's cool. It's funny how sometimes, we think we made a mistake, and it's actually like really cool. And, I wouldn't have done it if I didn't actually make that mistake. And also, if you make a mistake, like what can you make out of it, right? So it's interesting to actually let yourself make those mistakes, because great things can come from them. And I'm kind of just going back, maybe adding some of that yellow, which will just kind of fill in those holes, making things a little bit more intense and all these warmer colors. And again, you know, you could have left it light. I think that looks really pretty. A little bit more intense than the one up there. It's kind of fun to see, you know, if you do a few skies, how it changes, or, you know, the feeling, how you're feeling that particular day, like how your art really shows that, how you're feeling. That looks nice. And I know I can go back and add more to that. But my next step I'm going to focus on is my way out there, my horizon. I have these trees. Now you could add like 500 trees, you could add 2 trees, you could add however many you like. I also am not going to really worry about exactly how these bad boys look. I'm going to let them just kind of do their own thing and whatever kind of shape I'd like. So a little like amoeba shapes, or maybe like one like this, and maybe play with the size so they don't have to be all the same size. So just some really crazy shapes, and I can plan it out. I can try it out first, and they're going to be back here. The smaller, the further away, the bigger, the closer. So kind of think about that. These are going to be pretty far away. I'm going to start with this guy here. Something like that. I'm going to do a medium to light drawing with at first, and then I can always add, you know, more pressure, outlines, shadows. You can overlap your shapes. They're just kind of crazy looking right now, but now I'm going to go ahead and I could use 2 different greens. I could do greens with blues. I could do all kinds of things. You can really play with that color combos, absolutely. So I'm just going to kind of do a medium pressure here, because I'm going to go on in and add some darker little squiggles, maybe in the bottom part, maybe some here and there in my tree. There's some like darker shadows being cast by my leaves. I could go in with another green. I could add yellow. I could add some blues in there. I could add browns, whatever you'd like. For my trunks, I'm just going to pick up my black, and I'm not even just adding these little lines. Maybe there's some trees that the greens go all the way down, so there's just a tiny little bit, or you can't even see, or I have a long one, whatever you think, or whatever your paper is really telling you. So that looks great. If you wanted to even go in with some black and add some shadowing, you can do that as well. Don't overthink it. These are tiny, out of focus, just out there, but I like them. And now my next step, I'm going to start filling in my mountains. Again, you could use greens, you could use black, you could use whatever color you'd like. I'm going to choose to use purple. You could use that round mark, which might be kind of cool. Should I do it? Should we change it up a little bit? I think I'm gonna. Why not? So in the beginning, I showed you some different techniques, remember? And I showed straight circles and crosshatch. I could totally do crosshatch, but I'm feeling a little wild, so I'm going to be using some circles maybe. So I have my purple, and I'm just going to do a really light to medium pressure, and I'm just doing a circular motion as I'm filling in. And again, I'm just using a 12 pack of Crayola colored pencils, and I'm practicing or playing with the amount of pressure. I'm playing with my mark, and I'm playing with layering, taking it from kids to real art. Or actually, I shouldn't say that. Kids art is awesome, but just taking it up a step. No, kids' art is real art, of course. So I'm just going in and I'm doing that circular motion, just trying that out, just seeing what that does. And this is where I'm going to focus on the bottom half, maybe changing my mark to a little bit of flat right to left, focusing on that very bottom, moving my way up, and just like we did in our sky, putting that pressure, then lighter as you go with the pressure up, as you go up your mountains. And then you can say, all right, well, that's kind of cool, but what else can I do? Can I put, you know, one mountain in front of the other? Yeah, very easily. I'm adding my line, and then I'm saying that this mountain is adding a shadow here. So I'm just going to add that, which gives depth, layering, overlapping. You know, maybe there's a little, you know, interest there, a little bit darker there as I go up. And now I'm really noticing that my tree that I thought was super dark in the beginning is actually really light, right? So maybe once I have my grass down and all that, I can go back, revisit my tree, maybe add a little bit more texture because my tree is right in front of me, right? So I'd be able to see that texture, and because it's so close to me, and it's going to be a little bit more intense because it's right in front of me. So we'll go back to our tree. But for now, let's go ahead and go down to our fence. Now, you don't have to add this fence, but I like how it looks in my drawing. And I also like that I can kind of like walk in here. So I'm going to create my little fence, and I'm going to start with my brown. So we started with black on our tree, so I'm going to flip it. So I'm going to start with brown. And I'm just going to think about how I want to set up my fence. Do I want it on an angle? Do I want it broken? Do I want it to have pointy tops to them, the posts? However you want your fence to be. Try it out on another piece of paper, Google a fence, whatever one you like, find it, and then let's do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with 2 posts. So I'm going to start with one, and starting with one, I'll know how big the other one's going to be. So I'm picturing it using my finger and saying, all right, now I'm saying to myself, well, is that the right or left side of that fence post? I'm going to say that's my left. So now I'm going to say, well, how thick is this post? So I can add thickness either to the top or bottom. If you want it to be on an angle, your top, or if you want it to be jagged, whatever you'd like, take your time and go ahead and do that. I'm going to keep mine pretty flat. And then now I know the width. Now I'm going to go back down, and I have the height. So you're like, all right, I know that one. So I can use my pencil also as my ruler. Tip of my pencil, top of my fence post, my fingers at the bottom. And now I know that that is the length of this fence post. I'm going to move on over. I could put my finger down if I wanted and make a little mark at the top too. You always can remeasure, or you can say, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and go for it. Absolutely. So from here, I'm going to line, say, is that the right or left side? I'm going to say that that is the left side. I know the thickness here. I could go ahead and measure, or I can just eyeball it, pull it over. Is it on an angle? Is it jagged? How is the top of it? And now I'm just going to go down. So that looks great. Now I'm going to think about the rails here. So are they broken? Are they straight? Are they thick? Are they thin? And I'm just going to picture it. I'm going to move down a little bit on the side, and I'm going to go right across. So I'm going to say to myself, is that the top or bottom? Say that's the top. Say, how thick do I want it? I don't want it too thick, so I'm just going to go ahead and go across. Cool. So I have my whole one there. Now I have an idea of what next one's going to look like. Move down to however I want it to go however high or low. I know my thickness. I'm just going to move down. So that looks great. Now I'm just going to bring those right across. And that looks cool. So now I'm going to think about my mark, my stroke. So I have up and down on this because it's long. I'm going to do the same thing on my posts, and then I'm going to turn my mark this way for this part of my fence. And I'm going to use like a medium pressure. You can take your time on those sides, cleaning up those edges. And if you've painted with me before, this is totally different than paint, but I absolutely love it. And this is just like the very beginning. Like, there's so much you can do. We could blend, you know, all different kinds of colored pencils. There's watercolor colored pencils that are like, I used to like be in love with them, and I still love them, and I can't wait to, you know, find mine and start playing. So I have kind of like an even, this is all right, you know, it's even, it's flat, it's all right, it's not that exciting. So now I want to add a little bit of interest. So I'm going to keep my brown close, but I'm going to pick up my black, and I'm going to add some shadows. So I know that the underneath part of this fence here is going to be a little bit darker. So I'm just going right on that brown, just going back and forth, adding a little bit of a shadow, adding my bottom edge. And as I go up, just like we've done in our mountains and in our sky, I'm going to let up a little bit on that pressure, but just in letting that blend, and I can keep building it up. I can stop, move up here, I can go back down and add a little bit more. I go over here now. And what's great about colored pencil is that there's no, you know, real cleanup, right? Because you just need to put them right back in their little case or bag, wherever you keep them. And there's no water or brushes to clean, so that's awesome. And so you can drop these in your bag, you know, take a walk, sit in your yard, look at your favorite tree, or go to the beach or whatever and have a little notebook, a little sketch pad, and have your tools right there. All you need is a sharpener. You can add as much. You can go in and add, you know, if you want to add, if you can see any of that wood grain, you can, but I kind of just am allowing this kind of blend, and that's kind of creating that wood look. If you wanted to, you could, you know, play with, can you see like any of the top of that? So you could add some thickness to your posts. Kind of cool. So that definitely, you know, went from flat and like okay to really cool. So that's great. And I'm going to go back into my tree, but I'm going to go back into my tree later because I really want to see what this green does to this as well, because you really have noticed that it's really changed since we just had just that on our paper to now having all this. But I'm going to go focus at the way back here. My sun is either setting or rising, and it's right behind my mountains, so the light is strongest way closer to my mountains here. And as it's coming down, it's getting darker. Right, so light maybe it's not reaching there. So to start, I'm going to actually do kind of like what we did for our sky. I'm picking up my yellow, and I'm going to start back and forth right underneath those mountains, and I'll bring it down again, nice and loose marks. They don't have to be tight. My hand, I don't have it tight around my pencil. You don't want to hurt your hand. Be light and loose. All right, that looks cool. Now I'm going to pick up my light green, and I'm going to start down here just like we do in painting, and then go on up. Nice and light. I can start playing with that amount of pressure, you know, go lighter, lighter, lighter as I go. Back and forth, lighter, lighter, lighter. And I can slowly build this up. if I were to go hard pressure back and forth, you would create like a layer that you wouldn't really be able to add multiple colors to it. So by slowly building it up, even if you're like, well, I could just push down and get that, you know, dark look. Well, yeah, you definitely can, but you know, by adding these light layers, what it's doing, it's really allowing you to add multiple colors, which I find, you know, definitely with greens in nature, that one, if I don't have to use a green out of the box, or two, and just create my own, that's awesome. If I, you know, if I'm using the green out of the tube or out of, you know, on my pencil, then I totally want to add layers of color, because it definitely adds interest. And why not, right? I mean, it can be just one solid, but it's a lot more fun adding multiple. So again, if you're getting towards that bottom of the edge of your paper, just hold on to that edge so you don't rip it. Pulling right off. And I'm going to start building some more layers. And as I get close to the bottom of my fence, starting with this light green, I'm going to push a little bit harder and create a little bit of shadow right at that base, just giving that grounded. All right, I'm going to switch on over to my dark green. I'm going to start at the base, and paint with me, you're going to be like, yeah, we've done this before, right? It's kind of cool to see what you can bring and what's different from painting to colored pencils, right? Like I said, this is just like a few of like the fabulous things that you can do with these. So it's just really fun watching the color just grab that paper. So I'm going lighter pressure because I want it to start getting darker down here. Now I'm pushing down a little bit more, letting those little nooks and crannies start to build. Fill with color. So before I get any heavier, I'm going to maybe add, and they don't need to be the star because this is the star of the show, right? But maybe I'm gonna add just some like yellow little circles down here, just putting a lot of pressure. And I'm just maybe saying that these are going to be maybe some dandelions. I could go in with some orange too if I wanted. And they're just very light. So there's that. I can always continue to build that up. I can go to a different color. I could try maybe some blues. I could try adding here's some purple. It keeps tricking me tonight. That's kind of cool. Or I could add a little bit of black in there. And I can think about now, like, is there a bottom edge here? Maybe there's a little bit of shadow cast from the treetops. And now check this out. So look how light my treetop is now that my grass is down. So it's really interesting to see what that does once you start filling it in and getting rid of that white, like what it does to what you already have. And that same thing with painting. With painting, I love to start with a toned background. So I would start with like a darker background rather than white, because it really helps with having my colors kind of stay true, and that I don't have to go back in and change things so much when I have a darker base. But anyway, now what can we add? What can we change? Let's see. So we're really close to this here, right? We're close to these dandelions. We're close to this fence out here, further away. So it's a little bit more, you know, I don't have as much, can't think of the word, detail, oh my goodness, much detail back here as I would as closer to me, right? So I can start really building some pieces of grass. Just like with painting, I like to start from the bottom and I go up. You can do however you'd like. You can do multiple colors. You could do some browns. You could do a couple multicolored green. Add as much. You know, this is like, what else can I do? What can I add? Try things out on a different piece of paper. But I'm going to keep these little pieces of grass, and as they're going away from me, they're going to get shorter because they're further away. Just going in, adding some interest. Maybe there's a few little brown pieces in there. Maybe I have a little bit of dirt showing. Maybe I can go add a little bit of brown. So now look how light our tree is. So now I'm going to go back in here. I'll start with my black, and I'm really going to start building it. So, you know, play with your amount of pressure, and I'm going to start adding some texture of my bark. So I'm going to start pushing down a little bit harder here and there. You can do this, you know, a different way. You could keep it how it is. You could add, you know, if you want it to be more poppy or cartoony, you could totally like outline it. But I'm just going to, you know, build it up a little bit and play with these marks to add a little bit more texture. I went for a walk with my parents recently, and down at the pond, there's these pine trees, and their bark is unbelievable. It's these big, I don't even know how to explain it. Big like chips, like big, layered on top of each other, and it's just awesome. I did take a picture. Maybe I'll post that. But it's really interesting to see, you know, what actually trees are, you know, create. They are beautiful. But I could, you know, shade a little bit more on one side. If it's calling for another branch, why not? Can add any thickness to any other branch. It's harder to take away. And I can do the same thing with that brown. Adding these little patches here and there. Pushing down here and there, creating these little textures. You could build, if you wanted to keep going, you could add like a little nest up here. You could do whatever you want. It's really fun to go back up to your treetop and add more texture, more layers. But I think that was a lot of fun, and they're just using a 12 pack of Crayola. I've created a really cool piece of artwork, and I can just kind of build on this. Tomorrow morning I could you know, say, oh, well, what else can I do? Could I add another layer of color? Could I add another direction with my mark? So, you know, just be brave and try. And it's okay if you make a mistake, because wonderful things can happen from those mistakes. And you know, maybe we can learn a few more little tips and tricks of our colored pencils another day, but I hope you had fun. And if you decide to do this another day or tonight, please send me a message with a picture of what you've come up with. And just thank you so much, and I hope you're having a wonderful night, and I hope to get creative with you again soon. All right, goodbye, my friends. Bye.